tiger. And honestly, when I went down my list, and I would try to come up with reasons not to like the animal. Like, okay, I don't like the bird because he can't fight. Don't like the bear because he stinks. And the lion stinks and he sleeps too much. And then I got to tiger, and I was like, oh, there's nothing wrong with the tiger. And so I circled tiger. And then later I was like, ooh, a white tiger, because there's something special and unique and interesting already about a white tiger. And so I thought, oh, and I needed a handsome prince, and I wanted to base it in the real world, and there just aren't that many places that had handsome princes. So we couldn't do an American prince. We don't have one. And the UK princes are kind of, Prince Charles is not the prettiest guy to look at. And I was thinking about, well, where's some good-looking, Russia, that's where the white cats come from, right? Russia, they can run in the snow. That's beautiful. So for a long time, I started researching Russian cats. A long time. And then I finally switched over to research tigers. It's like, oh, tigers don't come from Russia. I mean, they have tigers, but not the white. The white tiger doesn't run in the snow in Russia. It was a little sad. and I was like, India. He comes from India. And so I learned that all white tigers come from one cub that was caught in India in the 1930s. And he was brought to these states and bred with his daughters and granddaughters, which is where all the white tigers come from. So all the white tigers have some Bengal in them. I was like, India? Ooh, boy. I don't know anything about India. And India honestly scared me. I was like, India. Well, they had princes. Okay. So I started researching, Indian princes and stories about, and I found this story about a prince from about their time period who was killed with tiger claws, which I use in the prologue a little bit. And there was an actual prince killed with only it wasn't really tiger claws. Tiger claws are a weapon, actually, that he was kind of ripped apart with. But I liked the idea of it, and so I used the real prince's name for a while in the story. And then I thought, maybe I should hire an editor from India just to make sure I'm doing all this correctly. And so she read the prologue. She's like, no, don't use his real name. You can't use that prince or his kingdom. And I don't think I used his name. I think I used like his middle name or his grandchildren's name. And I used his kingdom. She said, don't use that kingdom. They'll burn all the libraries if you do that here. So that's where Mujulain comes from, and Brenham. Those are fake names. They're not real. And how I got those names was I picked up a book on Indian places, like a tourist guide, and I picked the first part of one city and the second part of another city and stuck them together. So it was Muju and then Lane, and stuck them together, and same thing with Brenham. And Ren and Kishan's names came from the babynames.com website. Most authors get their names from there. And I was just looking up, male names, Indian names. Ren means powerful, I think. Kishan means black. And Nalima means blue. And Anik means soldier. And so when I stuck the names together, by that time I was already done with the first book, and then my India editor came back to me again and said, the names in India are actually based on caste. So if you're in this caste, you're called Jennifer, but a Jennifer would never be in the upper class. They'd be in this caste. And also it's regional. So Ren's name is from the northern part of India, and Kishan's name is from the southern part of India. They would never be brothers in real life because they wouldn't be in the same place. So it's interesting. So if you're a Mary and you live in New York, you would never be Mary and live in Oregon. It just doesn't work. So it's like, well, that's kind of weird. I'm keeping it. I don't care. She's like, fine. You made up the country anyway, so it doesn't matter. And then Kelsey's name, I just liked Kelsey. I just picked it because I liked it the best. And Hayes comes from Kelsey's inspiration, which was Maddie Hayes from Moonlighting. I don't know if you can get so back when Bruce Willis had hair. He was on a great show called Moonlighting, and I loved those two characters a lot. How they would always want to be together but never could, and they were always fighting, and it was great stuff until they got married, and then it went downhill from there. But so Kelsey Hayes is where I got her, and her mom is actually called Maddie Hayes. So in the book. Any more questions? You guys are asking some good ones.
Like how is it that you write a book? Do you have like an outline for how you want the story to go, and you fill it in, or do you have these ideas and concepts and just flush them out?
In the writing world, I've learned that authors get asked if they're plotters or pantsers. That's the term. And I think I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. Because I like the organization of plotting things out. And if you look at my old plan for the books that I wrote, it has exactly, book 1 is the Earth book. They're going to fight the Kappa and needle trees, and there's some kind of precious stones involved. And there's going to be, they're going to go after the golden fruit of India. So I knew those things about it, but I didn't really know how I was going to get there. And right now I'm working on plotting out a new series, and I have the same issue because I don't really outline. Say, well, in this chapter, such and such is going to happen, and this is going to go. I kind of like to weave my way there, and my agent wants me to outline it all. I'm like, but I don't want to. It's not the way I do it. So he wants me to have more of a vision. But I like kind of just bare bones. So
since you're working on a new series, does that mean you finished the last?
No.
No?
Nope, it's all political. We want to get you sold into the new series so they can start working on it and get it going. And while at the same time you're writing this one, at the same time you're doing marketing for this one. So it's all you're always 3 or 4 steps ahead of what's on the market. So it's like, it's time, and I'm like, but I don't want it. I'm still working on Tiger stuff. Nope, it's time to think about the future. So.
Is the new series your West series?
No, because they want to do a clean, brand spanking new series and then have me do my other stuff that I want to do on the side when I'm in my free time. So yes. They would like it if authors were just chained with handcuffs to their computers, is what they would like. You don't get to have a social life at all. You just going to sit and get wider and wider and wider and you write, because you can't ever get up. So that's what they prefer. So we're working on the movie for the first book right now. Yes. Yes, we're pretty hopeful. Even when a production studio, right now we're in what's called the option phase. And the good thing about movies nowadays is you will know, they start promoting stuff way before they even, it's a glimmer in the director's eye sometimes. I mean, you get stuff promoted for Batman years before the movie comes out, and so that's kind of how it works. So they just leaked, not they, but it was just leaked who my writer was, for my screenwriter that they just hired. And after the screenwriter, then comes director, then comes cast, and then they schedule everything. When are you available? When are you available? When are you available? So when everybody's available, they put it all on the calendar, and then they go into production.
As a book writer, do you get to go?
There's some things I get to do. It's in the contract that I get invited to the red carpet, which is nice. I get to bring one significant other with me, so my mother's going to cry. I know it. See, and my husband's deaf, so he's like, I'm like, honey, Mom can go with me. She'll actually, and he's like, no, they can put captions on the screen for me. And so they're not going to do it on the red carpet, dear. They're not going to. Yeah, they will. No, they won't. They won't. So we'll see who loves me the best that year gets to go. So my mother-in-law is still holding out hope, I think. I don't think that's going to happen. We'll see. But yeah, so it goes into production in the very last phase, and then that's when they start sending out little clips and little tidbits to tease you online and stuff like that, like they're doing with Breaking Dawn. So, yes.
So you see in some of these movies that get taken from books that they change certain things and the fans like go crazy and they're like,
Yeah.
that's not right. How
Yeah.
do you feel about that? Like if they change your
If they
creation?
change, my feeling is everybody puts their own stamp on something. Everybody wants to put their own. You know, I've talked to Holly Black, who wrote Spiderwick, and the first time I met her, I went up to her and I said, so, did you like Spiderwick? Exactly, the movie? And that's not the question you ask the author, because they get a little upset about that. And I was like, do you really? And she goes, yes, I helped write it. Oh. It wasn't like the books at all. And she's like, no, I know. And she said, you know, and her advice was that the author has to pick their battle. She said specifically, pick the hill you're going to die on. and that's for her, in those books, in that movie, it was her fairies, she said. She wanted her fairies to be exactly right, and then gave them kind of carte blanche to do whatever else they wanted. And for me, I feel like, you know, take my story and make it better. Do it cooler. Do it even better than I did it. I'm not the kind of person who's just got to be this way or the highway. And obviously, I don't want them to change the characters. You know, I want the characters to remain the same. But if they cut out little pieces or switch things around a little, like they talked about in the first book, we don't have Lokesh very much. He doesn't make an appearance, and they need a villain in the movie. So I'm like, well, feel free to go take pieces of book 4 or book 5. You know, go take little things there and put it in and mix and match. Like I think it'd be a cool idea to show Kelsey's parents dying in the movie. You know, little things like that you don't see in the book. So in that aspect, I'm all for it. I'm like, you know, feel free to, because then I write a lot of bonus material that doesn't make it in the book. So I try to give them everything so that they have everything to pull from. So, because obviously there's a lot more going on than just what Kelsey sees. Kelsey doesn't see everything. So, yes.
So did you just like wake up one day and say, I'm going to start writing this book?
Kinda, yeah.
Never a writer, never wrote anything before?
Nope. Well,
you started writing?
I was an interpreter for a long time, a sign language interpreter, and I was working in a high school. And whenever they would have testing days, like PSAT stuff, I would just be sitting there all day staring in space. I would get the literature books that they read, and I'd read through them, and then I was like, oh, you know, it'd be cool if I adapted some of the fairy tales to have deaf characters. You know, and I was just playing with that idea. So I wrote like a Borg Star Trek, what if they went to a deaf planet and they tried to assimilate everybody and all the deaf people were still signing and they couldn't control them. And then I was like, and what if you know, Hansel and Gretel were going to go to Hansel and Gretel, the new stepmom wanted them to speak and not sign, and so they couldn't go to the deaf school anymore, so they threw them out in the woods, you know. So I kind of came up with all these different little things, and I wrote short stories. And I wrote a couple of short stories about my dog, and, you know, just for fun. And I did a recipe book, like a 5-generation recipe book for my family history. But I didn't really write anything serious until this. So Tiger's Curse is my first novel. Kinda. Well, it started off with my sister brought me over the Twilight book to my house, and she said, you need to read this book. And I said, well, what's it about? And she's like, oh, it's great, it's vampire teenage romance. And I was like, yeah, I don't really think that's what I want to read. She goes, no, I never recommend a book, you'll love it. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. So I took the book, and I read it in like 2 days, and went to work, and ran over during my lunch break to buy the next 2. And I got through those 2 in 2 days. And that was my first YA book. I'd never read YA before. I didn't know it existed. I'd always been a romance fan, but I kind of gave it up because we could read at work when we weren't on call. At that time, I was working in a call center as an interpreter for deaf people who wanted to call mom and dad or call their bill company or whatever. So in the off moments, I could read. And I never wanted to everybody comes like, hey, what you reading? It's Fabio. I didn't want that. I was embarrassed. And I was like, oh. And they didn't have e-readers then. And I was like, oh, it's a Scottish Laird book again, you know. And so I kind of gave them up. And I was reading kids' books, Harry Potter and you know, that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, there's got to be something in between. And so she gave me the Twilight books, and I was like, oh, this is great, because it's got the romance I wanted, but it's like romance light. And so I was like, woohoo! And so I got all my girlfriends at work to read them, and we went to the movie together, and we all giggled, and it was fun. And I was like, this is exactly, wait a second, Breaking Dawn, when's Breaking Dawn coming out? And I looked it up online, it was like 7 months away. And I at that time had that special teen angsty feeling all over, where I wanted to stalk Edward in my car, and I couldn't find him, and I wanted something else, and I didn't know what that something else was. And I was like, there's got to be more books like this out there somewhere. I got to, you know, I didn't think go to the bookstore and find them. I was like, where? I've never read anything like this, or where am I going to get it from? So it was actually right after I finished Eclipse that I started sketching out the series. And I finished with the idea that I was writing clean books for women. I did not think it was YA. I didn't really know what to call it. It was just, you know, romance light for women. And with adventure, because I like adventure and martial arts and stuff like that too. And so I finished Tiger's Curse actually the day that Breaking Dawn came out. So it took me 7 months from the time I finished Eclipse to writing the last page in Tiger's Curse. So it was kind of a cool moment for me. Yes?
Well, this is semi-off topic, but being your husband is deaf, I think I had read once that you watched Switched at Birth.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that the people portray the deaf characters pretty accurately enough?
We like to giggle at that movie because
yeah?
it's really fun. I actually despise Marlee Matlin.
Okay.
She's not my favorite person. The guy who plays her ex is not either. And the deaf world is very small.
Okay.
Very small. So you actually run into people who are deaf. But we really like Emmett. Emmett's cool and awesome. The girl, not so much. She can't sign worth a darn, really. It's kind of annoying to watch her try to fumble through language and pretend that Emmett gets what she's saying. So, but we really like the show. I think the show's really cool. We're very addicted to it. We watch that, and we watch Once Upon a Time, and we watch Vamp Diaries is our favorite. It took me a while to get my husband to watch it with me. And like probably the first season he wouldn't, and then I made him watch like 2 shows, and he's like, okay, when's the next show? So watch that. We started watching The Walking Dead, and I'm surprised I like it. I didn't think I would, because I hate horror in all forms, but there's something very compelling about that show.
It's more like social commentary.
It's almost like Lost, which is one of my favorite shows, because it's a lot like that. So I watched that. Not enough shows on their season. I think the first season was only 6 shows. And we watch Grimm, because it's based in Portland, which is where we live. We like that. So, and we're big Trekkies, but we don't have a Star Trek show on right now. Yes.
Did you like Enterprise?
I liked Enterprise. I liked the idea of Enterprise more than execution. I loved the opening with the song and the Enterprise.
It makes me want to go like
very
this.
inspiring. Yes, I was always like, oh, yes. And then you get there and you're like, can't they do it a little better? You know, there were some characters I liked. Like Dr. Phlox, he was great.
Yeah.
The Doctor's
Why is the Doctor always the best
Doctors
character?
are always the best one. And the Vulcans usually. Any more? Yes.
When you get your book edited, how much is taken out?
That's a good question. When we edited Tiger's Curse, this book was about 144,000 words and went down to 120. For Quest, it was about 160 and probably dropped to 130. And Voyage is my editor's favorite, so we kept most of it. We took out 1 chapter. There was actually 2 chapters in this one. There were 2 chapters from Lokesh's perspective, kind of right smack in the middle of the book. And she's like, no, everybody gets confused, throws the reader off, they won't know who's talking. I'm like, oh, it's kind of obvious. And she's like, no. So instead, we reincorporated those 2 chapters Because I had a chapter when he was sitting there watching a video of the Temple of Durga, and he rewatched the whole scene where Durga comes to life, and then the screen went staticky, and then it comes back when she's not alive again. And so he gets mad, and he like crushes the video. And then the other chapter was when he was on the pirate ship thing, and he had caught the crew in Mahabalipuram, or however you say that name. Anyway, he had caught the captain, and so it showed Captain Dixon being killed, which we reincorporated a bit into the vision, because I didn't want to lose it. I wanted to keep that part because I love, but you see more stuff in it, like he's torturing the maid and, you know, hurting other people, and so it's a little violent, nasty, but she's like, no, we're going to switch it around. And then in book 4, we again cut about 2 chapters out. So, yeah. That one's actually the longest book I wrote. That was like 180,000 words, Destiny. And now it's probably, I don't know what the final count is. We're still working on the copy edits, but it's probably down to 140 now, somewhere in there. Yep. But it's okay because I will put those chapters online later. Because we dropped an entire chapter, well, you'll see it later. But, so mostly what I talk about when I talk about Destiny, I try to tell the same thing everywhere I go so that, so I don't give somebody a spoiler and somebody a spoiler and they end up putting the whole book together somehow. So one of the cool myths in Tiger's Destiny is it's a fire book of the series, and so there's a lot of fire stuff, fire creatures. So they go into a fire realm, and they meet the Lords of the Flame, which are 2 twin brothers. Obviously, if they're twins, they're brothers or sisters. But anyways, 2 twin brothers, also very good-looking fellows, and they are volcano gods, essentially. And they're based on a Native American myth from Oregon. And on one side of the Columbia River is Mount Hood, which is a big volcano mountain, where they do a lot of skiing these days. And on the other side of the mountain is St. Helens, which is not as peaky anymore. No. And they've lost its top. But there's a Native American myth that there were 2 brothers who were in love with the same girl, and the one brother went off to battle, and he didn't return. So she ended up marrying the other brother, and they were having a happy life for a while, and then the first brother comes home from battle, and he's alive, and everybody thought he was dead. Well, the girl feels so terrible about this because she's still in love with the other brother that she kills herself. And the 2 brothers mourn, and they kneel down on the ground, and they fall down, and they're sad, and then snow starts building up on their backs. And they become Mount Hood and Mount St. Helens. And so I made these 2 Fire Lords. I gave them the same names, although I shortened them because Native American names are like that. So one of them's called Shayla. What's the other guy's name? Oh, can't think of his name. Anyway, so the 2 of them are looking for their long-lost love, whose name is Lawala, and that was the same name of the girl that's in the myth, Lawala. And she goes away, and so I play on the idea of virgin sacrifices to the volcanoes. So every girl that gets sacrificed to a volcano ends up in their realm, and then they test her to see if she's their long-lost love reincarnated in a new body. And if she doesn't pass the test, then she becomes one of the citizens of the town and stuff. And so Kelsey shows up, and they think she's one of the virgin sacrifices, and they want to take possession, and then they have to fight Ren and Keyshawn.